I'd like to talk to you today about the actual Social Security Disability hearing room. What does the hearing room look like? What do you need to expect? Who's going to be there? How do you dress? That type of thing. Social Security hearings are different than regular judicial hearings. If you've ever been to a state or superior court, you know when you walk in, there'll be a bailiff, an armed guard typically, who's protecting the judge and the witnesses. There'll be witness tables. And most importantly, in a regular courtroom, a superior court or state court, people can kind of walk in and out, except in unusual circumstances. People are free. It's open to the public. In fact, years ago, going to a court was kind of a social event. But Social Security hearings are a lot different than that. Social Security hearings are not open to the public. These are administrative hearings as opposed to judicial hearings. I'm not going to get into all the legalities of that, but basically an administrative hearing essentially means that you have a judge who is both the both the finder of fact as well as the arbiter of law. So it's a little bit different than a regular courtroom, and you don't have the right as a member of the general public to go sit and watch. I guess it's good for privacy purposes, but one of the issues, of course, is that if you do have a disability hearing, you can't go watch and see what's going to happen. So I'm going to try to tell you about that a little bit now. The actual hearing is in a courtroom, a small room, a lot smaller than what you probably expect. It really looks more like a conference room. And when you get there, you'll see that the judge will be sitting on a bench. Typically, it's not real high. It's not very far away. And there'll usually be a conference table in front of the bench. And so essentially, if you can imagine, you're sitting around a conference table. You may be sitting facing the judge, your attorney may be to your right, and there'll be another witness in the hearing, typically a vocational witness who'll be to your left. So again, imagine you're sitting at a conference table, you're at the front, and you've got people to either side of it. The judge will also usually have a hearing assistant whose job it is to record the proceedings, and they record these onto CD. They do that for purposes of appeals. So if there is an appeal, they do have a verbal record of what happens as well as the written record from the exhibit file. More recently, what we're seeing is there are computer screens there as well, because now the exhibit files are being done on CD. They're not physical files as much anymore. They're done on CD, and so the attorney will actually have a CD and a computer screen and a monitor and a keyboard where he can go through the exhibit file, which is actually electronic now. So, for example, I had a hearing this morning, and I got there, and the hearing assistant gave me a disc. I'd already seen the disc, but this was an updated version of it. I went to the hearing room. I put the disc into the computer, and then I had the exhibit file right in front of me right then. So again, we're talking about a very small room, kind of a small conference room, with a judge sitting at the front with a hearing assistant next to him, and then there'll be typically a long table. You're at the front of the table, and your attorney will be usually to your right. They're right with you. And to your left, there'll be a vocational witness. And vocational witnesses are fairly common in disability hearings. And basically, the vocational witness's job is to identify your past work, to explain to the judge what you might be able to do given the limitations the judge finds. So vocational witnesses are not there to help you or hurt you. Basically, they're just there to assist the judge in deciding what type of work you might be able to do given your limitations. So basically, the hearing room itself is, it's a pretty informal situation. And as far as your dress, that's a question I get a lot as well. How should I dress? I guess my take on that is that I would not come in T-shirt and shorts. I think, in fact, I even tell people don't come in blue jeans. I think the best thing to do is come in maybe a nice pair of khaki pants and a button-down shirt or a polo shirt, something like that. I don't think it's wise to be too dressed up, because that looks like you're ready to go to work. But I also don't think you should come in real casual. I've seen people show up in, ripped T-shirts and blue jeans, and in my view, that's showing a certain level of disrespect for the court. And I think it's important to show the court that you do have proper respect. So I would not come in T-shirt and jeans. But otherwise, just make yourself comfortable. They do have glasses of, typically a pitcher of water, so you can have some water there. There will also be Kleenex, facial tissues. Sometimes people get emotional when they start thinking about the things they can't do, and they start to cry. So There'll usually be tissues there as well. And the hearings themselves last about 45 minutes. Often there's a clock. And I mention the clock because I think it's important if you testify that you can only sit for 15 minutes, kind of keep an eye on the clock, and after 15 minutes, stand up and stretch out. You don't need to ask permission to do so. It's okay to do that. But the important thing is if you testify you can only sit for 15 or 20 minutes and you sit there for 45 minutes or an hour, it's going to negatively affect your credibility. So I think that basically, if you sort of understand this is a fairly informal process, this is not like court where you have to, for example, when we introduce evidence, we don't need custodians of medical records and we don't need to establish chain of custody. It's nothing like that. They'll accept photocopies of records. They'll accept things submitted actually at the hearing date, although they don't like that. But it's, again, pretty informal. We don't need originals, don't need witnesses to verify the legitimacy of the documents. You can do that yourself. So this is really more of a discussion. Again, there's nobody on the other side. The Social Security does not have a lawyer there. The judge is asking the questions. So this is really your chance to talk to the judge and to paint a picture. And really, maybe one way to look at this would be if you've got a condition. For example, I had a case today. My client had fibromyalgia, and one of the questions I asked is, explain to me what it's like to have fibromyalgia. And that's kind of a way to look at this. You want to explain to the judge what your life is like, how it affects you, and how it would affect your possibility of going back to work. And so that's really the main issue in the Social Security case, but I wanted you to get a sense of what the hearing room is like, and that it's not real formal and that you shouldn't be too concerned about the formalities of it, how you should dress and so forth. And I hope that this is helpful in your preparations for your disability hearing.